Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll get started here in just a minute or less. Come on in. Okay, that is the top of the hour. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Alan Barr with COEH Northern California, and on behalf of the NIOSH-supported education and research centers throughout the country, we're pleased to present the 2023 ERC Ergonomics webinar series, where we offer free monthly webinars on various topics on human factors and ergonomics. This collaborative effort on behalf of each ERC's continuing education program aspires to provide access to current research supported through NIOSH ERC programs. Thank you again for joining us today. All participants who have logged in with their registration email today will receive a link to an evaluation form, and that will qualify you for a certificate of completion worth 1 continuing education contact hour. A couple of webinars coming up here on the 10th. What does total worker health have to do with industrial hygiene? And on the 18th, I see design and safety, sizing considerations for personal protective equipment. You can register for those and any other upcoming webinars at coeh.berkeley.edu/webinars. You will be muted for today's webinar. If you'd like to ask a question, and we encourage you to do so, please enter it into the online Q&A box, where we will save time at the end of the presentation to address your questions. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available along with past webinars on the COEH Northern California YouTube channel. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. Help us continue to grow. Today's topic, workplace design considerations for the aging workforce and for all. Our speaker today is Dr. Katia Costa-Black. Katia is the Senior Manager for Education and Partnerships at the Oregon Institute of Occupational Health Sciences, OHSU, where she oversees the total worker health portfolio. She's also a guest lecturer at the Center for Public Health Workforce Development, Rutgers School of Public Health, as well as the School of Health Systems and Public Health, University of Pretoria in South Africa. Katia brings an international, research-oriented, and multidisciplinary perspective to her teaching and ergonomics practice. She holds a PhD in industrial engineering, a master's degree in ergonomics and biomechanics, and a bachelor's degree in physical therapy. With that, it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to Dr. Costa-Black.
Thank you, Alan, and hello, everyone. The title of my presentation today is Workplace Design Considerations for the Aging Workforce. I'm very excited to present this talk to this community. And for the past several years during my consulting and teaching, I have been observing for some time the growing interest on workplace design as an approach to facilitating function for older workers who may or may not have yet limitations, and at the same time on issues related to designing the environment for health equity. And before I begin, I have two different disclosures here. I'll be presenting workplace design considerations from a total worker health lens, and it's important to acknowledge that this is a registered trademark of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the use of the term here is not endorsed by the HHS and the CDC and the NIOSH. I also have no conflict of interest in relation to this presentation. My intention today is to cover these three objectives. The first is to describe how the built environment can affect the physical and psychological health of workers, and particular design challenges for older workers. The second objective is to recognize the total worker health approach as a broader perspective to support healthy workplaces for the aging workforce and for all. And the third objective today is to identify key design principles to reduce physical strain and improve comfort for older workers and describe how these design considerations can benefit all workers. So based on recent statistics, and it's very likely that many of you are working with someone older than 55, or you are, in fact, older than 55. But as a group, older workers are projected to show a greater percentage in employment over other age groups. Also, the percentage of older than 65 years workers employed in full-time work has grown exponentially in the last few years and is projected to continue to grow. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employment of workers age 65 or older has grown by 170% in a span of 20 years. And this is applicable also to the 75 years and older. The increase is the same. The main industries observing these trends are manufacturing, wholesale, education, and healthcare. In the research world, there is a booming of information and is mainly about how can we help the aging workforce of today to maintain productivity while achieving a work and private life balance. We see in the literature terms such as successful aging at work, active aging at work, healthy aging at work, productive aging at work, and older adults at work. If you are not paying attention to this, you might be missing the boat. And societies need to really take a very smart look and multidimensional view of aging, since these individuals may provide really economical and social opportunities. And some researchers argue that an aging workforce may instead stimulate this social transformation that we need in the 21st century. And just to clarify a term, the aging workforce term and language that I'm going to use here, it refers to this demographic shift. With many developed countries, we see the experiencing on growing percentage of populations reach retirement age. We also observe the increased life expectancy with advances of healthcare and improvements in living conditions. And as a result, people are working longer and retiring late in life. As I mentioned before, the labor force participation rate of older adults has been increasing. And what we see also is many organizations are increasingly recognizing the value of older workers in terms of their experience and knowledge. And as a result, has been a growing focus on knowledge transfer and mentoring programs in the workplace. And the shift towards an older workforce has also led to changes in retirement planning, with individuals and employers looking for ways to support longer careers and financial security in retirement. I want to specifically speak about some age-related changes and implications, specific implications for workplace design. And it's important to understand that there is a heterogeneity among older workers with regards to physical, sensory, and cognitive functions. And I will give an overview of some of this change in terms of the implications for workplace design. And for the physical changes that it's observed in this population is we understand that there are extrinsic factors that are included exercise, nutrition, physical injuries, and other intrinsic factors, which is more a genetic makeup and a susceptibility to diseases. So typically, aging is associated with a change in muscle strength, endurance, flexibility, posture, and gait. And I'll discuss these changes a little bit in more details. So a decline in strength and in spinal flexibility result in postural changes in older adults. The forward posture of the head and kyphosis reduce the range of upward gaze in older worker. And this is an important aspects that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about workstation design. Low extremity muscle strength can decline up to 40% between age of 30 and 80 years old. And research has shown that the muscles of the hips can decline with age, and that forward shift of the center of pressure when people get up and move and stand up is reflected in that change. This is believed to be the reason why people have really older adults have difficulty to sit to stand movements from a chair. And muscle training can help, but it's also important to address design factors. For example, using chairs that are the right size for their height, and chairs that have armrests that can support when they're pushing up to get up for standing. The other change is related to the upper extremity coordination. Reaching movements such as repetitive tasks can slow down by 30% to 90% with aging, according to several studies. This can be attributed to various issues, including visual motor processing, center motor processing, attention, and some decline in upper extremity strength and endurance. And in terms of sensory changes, there are quite a bit of robust details on research and literature on this. But I just want to highlight some of these. And again, these are really in relation to what design considerations we need to observe when we are talking about this population. And in terms of sensory change, the visual changes are understood in terms of the gradual loss of the ability to focus on close objects, and making it very difficult to read small print or work on tasks that require close-up vision. And also, older adults may struggle with seeing in low light conditions, which can be a safety concern for jobs that require nighttime work or environments were very dark. The other one is the glare sensitivity. So increased sensitivity to glare from bright lights or computer screen can make it challenging to work comfortably in well-lit areas. And so it's important that we pay attention to older adults that might require a better amount of light distribution when they work workstations. And in terms of hearing changes, the age-related hearing loss can affect the ability to communicate with coworkers and to hear important instructions and warnings. And there are also, they may have trouble hearing high-pitched sounds, which can be critical in some types of jobs, and including alarms and machine noise. The other change is related to, as people age, their reaction time may slow down, which can be a concern in jobs that require quick decision-making and reflex. And there are also studies showing the sensory fatigue. Older workers might experience sensory fatigue more quickly than younger counterparts, which can impact their productivity and comfort during long work shifts. So these cognitive changes are also important to consider in older workers, and it can be complex and a multifaceted topic. And I won't be able to give too much on details on this, but as what I want to give is a little overview of these changes in relation to workplace design, what I identify as important. So there are some common cognitive changes that tend to occur as people get older, which can impact performance in the workplace. And it's important to note that these changes are general trends and may not apply to every older worker. And there might be a decline in working memory, which is the ability to hold and manipulate information in your mind and for short periods, and tends to decline with age. This can affect tasks that require multitasking or keeping track of multiple pieces of information simultaneously. And while long-term memory remains relatively stable, older workers may experience some decline in episodic memory, which is the ability to remember specific events and details. And then the other aspects of cognitive change is complex problem solving tasks may become more challenging for older workers. And definitely I will speak a little bit more about the kinds of work flexibility that will help support older workers retain their work status. And the final thing about cognitive change is recognizing the positive side of aging. And the studies have shown that older workers are higher, have higher emotional intelligence, which is an asset in jobs that involve interpersonal relationships and leadership. And also, they have a wealth of experience and accumulate knowledge that can compensate for those other cognitive changes. And they may excel in their roles that require deep domain of expertise. So, considering all these changes for the workplace, there are both challenges and opportunities associated with aging workforce. Challenges may include potential healthcare costs and the need to adapt to workplaces to accommodate older workers. On the positive side, older workers can bring a stability, expertise, and a strong work ethic on their jobs. And our reflection here is that we really depend on our environments to nurture and sustain our health and well-being. And a lot of attention should be placed on how can we achieve maximum functioning in life, not only to retain physical health, but also the psychological, social, and emotional well-being. And how can we promote an affirmative image of the aging labor force? It is important to recognize that many age-related changes and yet support all workers in the environment in the continuance of work for a longer duration in their lifetime. And to achieve this, some of these principles and the total health approach can be very helpful. And I'll be describing this in the next few slides. So the concept of total health is particularly relevant for aging workers as it recognizes the importance of addressing both work-related and personal factors that can impact health and well-being. For aging workers, this might involve addressing age-related health issues, providing opportunities for continuous skill development, and creating work environments that accommodate their changing needs. If you haven't read about it, I suggest that you take a closer look at the NYOSH Total Health Approach. Their website has great material for self-learning, and there are many professional development opportunities, which I'll be happy to assist you if you send me an email. And to summarize this approach, the premises of Total Health is that life on the job and outside are deeply interrelated in terms of health and well-being. The other premises is that the Total Health recognizes the whole worker and his, hers, and their needs in well-being and well-being. And it prioritizes this human-centered culture and inclusive. It is inclusive in a work environment that is free of harm to the extent that is possible, and propose a systems thinking and an ongoing efforts and the workplace as an entry point. And finally, the basis for total health comes from evidence-based and at least evidence-informed solutions that will help us drive through changes that are more meaningful and effective in the workplace. And the solution should be having a more upstream situation where we look into more at the entire workplace and work populations to address these changes in at the organizational level. And the Total Health is side by side with many other initiatives, such as the NIOSH Future of Work initiative. And this initiative proposes more specific attention to confront complex emerging issues, such as aging workforce. And if you haven't taken a closer look at these other initiatives, I also highly recommend to take a look, and you see some activities and including some resource material on the research side and research to practice development that are being available. So important aspects of the Toroka Health is the idea that by eliminating first working conditions that threaten safety, health, and well-being, we all workers can remain healthy and productive in their work. And the hierarchy of controls proposed by the Toroka Health is a good way to think about looking in terms of not just understanding the design or workplace design aspects that are necessary to be addressed, but looking to any other conditions that can impact and it may be impacting their health and well-being of workers. And one example that I like to share here is this example that I pulled from the NYOSH Promising Practicing webpage on Toroka Health, which I think is a really good example of a workplace that identified the need to support their aging workforce with average, the LL being had an average age of 50 years old for their employees, and they want to address this issue in the most comprehensive way. And the key of this program was really to engage workers to identify the solutions and also to obtain strong leadership commitment to their program. And the program included all these components that are listed on the slide, the manual material handling tasks and other ones. But I call attention here on the use of robotics and vacuum-driven lift assisted devices and adjustable pallet lifts. So making the manual handling task more easier for the worker that is older. It's also making it easier and safer for workers that are younger as well. So the attention given to the aging worker, the aging workforce, it brought benefits to other employees that are not older. So this is just an example that I want to share. And I don't want to spend too much time here, but I want to share that the NIOSH has defined 5 key elements that makes the Toroka Health Program a success. And as I mentioned, these elements were utilized in the case of the LLB that I just presented. And by integrating these principles of Toroka Health, employers can create this safer, more supportive, more engaging work environments that benefit all workers, regardless of their age or stage of life. And this approach really acknowledged that work and health are interconnected, and that by promoting well-being in the workplace, employers can contribute to the overall health of their workers. So if you wish to learn more about these elements, I recommend taking a look at the guide that is available in the NIOSH Toroka Health Program's webpage, and it's a really good place to start if you are curious about these 5 elements. So going to universal design is really another approach that I want to describe is an approach to designing products, environments, and systems that are accessible and usable by as many people as possible, regardless of age, ability, or other characteristics. And the goal of universal design is to create inclusivity and eliminate barriers to access for everyone, including individuals that are with disabilities and other individuals with different background. And what is interesting, if you're not aware of it, are that the universal design has 7 guiding principles. And the first principle is equitable use. Products and environments should be useful and accessible to people with diverse abilities. The second one is flexibility in use, and design should accommodate a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. The third one is simple and intuitive use, and products should be easy to understand and use regardless of the user's experience, language, or cognitive ability. The other one is perceptive information. Information necessary for use should be easily perceived through multiple sensory modalities, the visual, the auditory, and the tactile. Tolerance for error. Design should minimize hazards and the consequences of accidental actions. And the other one is the low physical effort. Products and environments should be designed to minimize physical effort and fatigue. And the last one is the size and space for approach and use. And this means that the adequate space and appropriate size should be provided for various activities and body size. So these 7 universal design principles are also refer as transgenerational approach. And the rationale for that is that if we design our products and environments for older adults, we are also designing for our future selves, and future generations will benefit. And applying these principles is considered to be beneficial for all workers, not just for the older workers and workers with disabilities. So, are we truly are we truly designing? I want to raise questions here and more in a reflection mode, that a lot of things when we see workplace solutions and understanding that different environments might require different solutions, and different workplaces are adopting technology in a very fast pace, but we have to take a step back and pause and reflect on, are we really truly designing considering these basic universal design principles? How does older worker feels about this gadget overload? And what are we considering that some of these are discriminatory in nature? How can we balance between designing workplaces for better health for all workers and the use of very helpful technology that can help older workers? So we have to make these considerations. And an approach that I think it's important is to consider is the HFE approach. I will describe in a second, the human factor ergonomics approach. And lots of mixed messages and misinformation, it's out there. And the best way to avoid misuse of science is to develop and pay attention to available guidelines that are really representing a consensus by experts on these subjects. And I want to talk a little bit about those. So before I talk about guidelines, it is good to describe here that in practice, universal design and human factors ergonomics often intersect, and designing with ergonomics human factors in mind can contribute to the creation of more inclusive and accessible and universally acceptable products and environments. And the key here is to look in terms of how the human factors ergonomics consider and see the abilities and needs of users by paying attention to the human dimension in this figure here. And additionally, the HFE applies multidisciplinary theory, principles, data, and methods to design in order to optimize the human well-being and overall system performance. So, in a summarized way, the HFE is concerned with the interactions among humans and the other elements of the system that are such as the organization as a whole, the management system, the technology that humans are using, etc. But one aspect of the aging workforce that can be addressed by considering the HFE system thinking is the idea that older workers have specific needs about social connection at work and the need of feeling the sense of belonging. So this could be including design guidelines for organizations. So when we look into the design process, we need to understand how it's done from the point of view of the HFE. And here are some of the main components of the design process. So definitely it's a more comprehensive that I can show in one slide. But in a very summarized way, this design process include really information that are available from design, from the standards, to really help you figure it out. What are the main principles that you could utilize? You need to understand very well the users and the end users, and what are the needs and preferences regarding ergonomics that exist. And we need to understand that the key ergonomic factors in the workplace design aspects to consider is posture, reach, visibility, and comfort. And they are all can be applicable to make design healthier for older workers. And the use of computer aided design, the CAD system softwares, they offer opportunity for these designs being prototyped and tested before being implemented in the real world. And then we also double check to see if it meets all the ergonomics design requirements that are listed in several of the guidelines available. So when we're considering these important guidelines that are available, there are questions that coming from more specifically on the job accommodation side that needs to be asked to better understand the users. And here are some of the questions, then guidelines that are offered by the Job Accommodation Network. They have a pretty robust information on aspects of design that are necessary for accommodating different people in the workplace, including older workers. And here are some examples of the questions. So what are limitations that the employee is experiencing, how these limitations can affect the employee and the employer's performance, and other ones, and even questions that are related to the employees' need of training as well. So it's important to really emphasize that the degree of limitation and the need for accommodation will vary a lot among individuals. It's not one size fit all. And so now I want to share with you some of the design considerations specifically on the aspects of changes that I mentioned before, the physical changes, the sensory changes, and the cognitive changes. In terms of design changes, physical changes, and design considerations for that, I listed here a few of the considerations to include in your design process. So thinking about workstations, how ergonomically designed they are, thinking about can any of the physical strain be reduced, looking to adjustability, looking to lighting, looking to how you can make them more comfortable and productive. Also looking to location height of signage and considering a lower upward gaze because of that postural change that I described it earlier. In terms of sensory changes, there is a number of considerations we can take a look. And more specifically, you can consult this reference that I put in the bottom that has a really large list of important sensory considerations. One of the more important things I listed here: increase the size of print, including pictures and signage, increase contrast, increase luminance contrast, use color patterns that are easy for reading, prevent glare on floor. And then in terms of cognitive changes, looking to aspects of communication that should be occur with eye contact and minimal or no competing background noise, providing options for flexible working hours, part-time work, job sharing, and remote work. And older workers might benefit from work environments that do not require multitasking, and create comfortable and inviting social areas that where employees can relax, socialize, and build relationships. And really ensuring an important communication strategies that can accommodate hearing and visual impairment is a really key aspect. So if we look into these design considerations and reflect on them and ask the questions, could these design consideration benefit all workers or only the older workers? And the answer is it's pretty clear that a lot of the recommendations existing on universal design guidelines and ergonomics, human factor ergonomics design guidelines really can benefit all workers. It doesn't, it really improves the health and well-being of all. And another resources that I like to share is that there are many great resources available to consult to ensure that these human factors and ergonomics design considerations are implemented. But they also highlight the total health vision. And first I want to describe that last year I presented a webinar about a project that I was working on ergonomics for total health. And someone in the audience prompted a question about well-being certification. And I don't know who this person was, but it really prompted my curiosity about this global initiative. So a well-being standard is a performance-based system for measuring, certifying, and monitoring features of the building environment that impact the human health and well-being. And the way they do that is by paying attention to these 7 categories. Some of these is about the bigger picture of the natural resources and the environment and how it can impact health and well-being. And others are more about the physical and the psychological environment and how that can support the well-being of all workers. So there's another resource here available for consultation that I want to share. So this was published in 2021. It's a consensus based on the International Ergonomic Association and also the International Labor Organization. And they described specific design principles and guidelines that will help ergonomists and non-ergonomists to see the application of a more comprehensive system thinking approach to design. And they describe some very particular information on the allocation of function between human and machines, which is very relevant when we're talking about the introduction of exoskeleton and other types of technology in the workplace. They also describe the relationship between the utilization of participatory ergonomics program with the workplace participatory that was developed by the one of the NYOSH Centers of Excellence in Total Health. And this is also a way of looking more in terms of creating design solutions and not just designing the workplace, but the work in itself and identifying work conditions using a participatory and more engaging way of addressing this. And then they also talk about how can we bring into more proactive solutions in terms of designing and redesigning systems that are already operational and creating a kind of supporting systems that exist in place and trying to improve them as they move along. There is a mention to the prevention through design principles as well. So designing out, creating opportunities that design is considered on a very early initial phase of any kind of system development. And then also they describe, and sorry, there's a typo there, utilization of different human factor ergonomics methodologies that are available. So with that, I want to open to questions, and I think I finished a bit earlier than I.
That's
Yeah,
okay. That's
yeah.
okay. That is fine. That was excellent. You really did present a treasure trove of resources there. I will let people know that you can request a PDF of the slides from coehce@berkeley.edu. If you send an email to that address, coehce@berkeley.edu, we might be able to get that to you. So, and that would be, I think, an excellent grouping of the resources. Okay, so yes, thank you for that excellent presentation. We did finish a little bit short, and we are a little short on questions. So if you have a burning question you'd like to get answered, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and I can assure you we'll get to it. I do have a question here. With more work being done from home, what workplace design recommendations do you have for older and all workers to ensure workplace safety and health? And how can employers manage home office workspace design solutions? I love that question. It's a big question, but it's a great
It
question.
is a big question. Thank you, Mitch, for the question. Yeah, it's a very important question. And if you think about strategies that are happening on the realm of total health, there are a lot of opportunities there to identify from the organizational level strategies that can empower all workers to feel health and safety while they are addressing these design considerations that I mentioned. I think that there are opportunities also in terms of task redesigning task in itself for older workers, and opportunities really to consider the who are your workforce, what are the limitations that they have, and organizations are doing better job on looking to a little bit on that side. But I think that designing for well-being also include information about not just the health and limitations in terms of how people are experiencing that environment, but also how people are feeling comfortable in that environment in terms of opportunities for rest and pause and socialization. So there's a lot of opportunities now to look into this well-being standard certification to improve that. That also there is a lot of studies coming out to prove that when we give attention to that well-being aspects, it also would have an impact on safety, and workers would be in a more motivated and concentrated to do their tasks. And as I mentioned in my presentation, the sensory fatigue aspects for older workers are an important one. So if organizations can consider that sensory fatigue by allowing them also to have pause and breaks when needed, it's also improving. It would have an impact on the safety aspects as well. So I don't know if I answer all the elements of your questions, but in a nutshell, I can tell you that.
Thank you. We have some questions coming in now. Thank you so much for bringing us your questions. I think early on you mentioned something about the upper extremity slowing down. I don't know if that's a reflex question or not.
Yeah, I definitely mentioned it. Yeah, and I have this study right here in front of me, so it's great. So yeah, so I mentioned the upper extremity, and this is I can actually send to this person Marge Werrell, I think, an information on the reference where I took that information from. But it's a chapter in a book on ergonomics book. And what it does, it gives it the detailed information that for the upper extremity, there are different elements that are has been studied. One of the things is that they contribute to factors related to manual dexterity that can lead to reduction of a repetition ability. And also the other thing is that the idea that aging relating changes can be observed only in certain experimental studies. We don't know yet from the research side if changes that are improving in terms of mechanization of the work could have a beneficial to this, to reducing the amount of repetition for older workers. And there is a functional a study about the functional ability of workers that is done in a lab environment. And so I could send that information in, if you wish to know more.
Thank you. Here's a question relating to these principles, applying these principles discussed to construction or other trades without fixed work areas. Do you know, has
Yes.
that been being done?
Yes, thank you for this question. I think that flexible environments where workstations are done, the principles of human factor ergonomics are applicable, doesn't matter where, but in terms of really creating changes in design, providing them in, and I actually have a particular example in practice where older workers were experiencing knee pain in a company that I work for, and we provide them with knee pads to be able to kneel during different tasks. And this solution, just using not and I'm not talking about knee mats, sorry, not knee pads. Workers were really resistant to the idea of knee pads, and we implemented the idea of bringing their own knee mats, and they absolutely loved it. And what happened was that it becomes kind of a domino effect because other workers didn't experience any kind of knee pain, were also benefiting from using that. So there are many other examples. I will not be able to, I'm not the best person to give you all the list of solutions, but if you haven't seen ergonomics solutions, I highly recommend the Washington Labor and Industry website has our ergonomics data bank solutions. If you Google that, you will find, and you can send an email and I will be able to send you that information. The data bank has a lot of good information, and you see some of the engineering solutions there. Would definitely see the application for older workers that can benefit all workers as well, and in the construction industry too.
What are your thoughts on pre-placement physical screening for material handling employees to qualify workers for particular tasks?
Yeah, I think that certain physically demanding tasks, we have to be careful about the discriminatory side of that, but definitely certain types of jobs require that screening to make sure that workers can perform safely. I'm not opposed to that. I think that you will have to really be careful about opportunities that are offered to older workers, and as long as they're not based on age discrimination, it is based on function. I am in favor of that.
Thank you. Do you have similar resources available for individuals, for workers with physical disabilities?
Yeah, so physical disability is a big topic, and I highly recommend, if you haven't seen the Job Accommodation Network website, it has a great data of solutions about solutions for disabled people, all kinds of impairments. Physical impairment and also visual impairments as well. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend that as a resource.
Thank you. Someone's asking if there's information available for day laborers who have no control over tools or work areas, etc. And I'll just jump in real quick and say a plug for CPWR. It's an excellent pooling of resources. It's a free nonprofit organization in DC that advocates for construction workers at all levels of construction. So please feel free to look that up, CPWR. If you Google that, you'll get more information than you can shake a stick at. If you have anything to add to that, Katia?
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan. I use their resources in my class, my ergonomics class. Definitely is amazing to see, and they are really research to practice resource. I'm really supportive of what they're doing. They have incredible amount of training videos that you can access for the workers in labor in the construction industry, but also, they are very useful for people actually in other professions. So I have a peek on their information and their one sheet, one pager information on certain risks, and I utilize that and apply for different environments. So it's a pretty good resource. Thank you, Alan.
Excellent. Let's see. Do you have any studies on the return of investment for all of these resources that employers provide through the Total Worker Health? And the example you gave was LL Bean. Do you have data on that?
I don't have directly, but I will pull for you, Paul. I will be happy to send you what I have as information on that. The case that I presented had some information, but there are more details on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the NIOSH website has some information there. But please send me an email, and I will get back to you with that information.
Okay, what do you think are the top two or three elements of total worker health that are not being addressed in most companies today? And perhaps with that, you could add the top one or two elements that are seem to be most engaged at this point in time.
The most okay.
Yeah,
I
the
would
well, that's
say,
yeah. Sorry, is
uh,
was that clear? Maybe I wasn't clear.
yeah, yeah, it was clear. I think organizations struggle big time with two things with total health. One is the idea of confidentiality data on health for the workers. I think they struggle with that one. They also struggle with one other aspects of these five elements that I mentioned is the idea is the worker engagement piece, because they assume that doing just a survey once a year, it's enough to know what workers are thinking. And the Total Health approach is a little bit more than that. So I think understanding deeper what it means, work engagement, participation, on understanding work conditions from the physical and the psychosocial aspects, it's very relevant. And I think organizations do have a hard time to bring it up the voices of all employees to the table in terms of getting solutions that are meaningful for advancing health and well-being. Those are the two. And then you mentioned something else on the questions about what are they doing the best. I think they're doing the best of understanding that total health organizations are doing well in recognizing that leadership commitment is an important piece. They're also doing very well on identifying hazards beyond physical hazards, so a broader understanding and designing work aspects, verifying how can they make changes in the design of the work in itself and the workplace in a way that integrates health promotion, health protection. So I think that is a piece that organizations are welcoming, because in some level they're already doing with health and safety management systems, and especially companies who are already implemented the ISO standard 45001. They have a easier way of looking at to these elements.
Okay, Jeff asks is if there is a place for fitness for duty evaluations in the current workforce, and is that too confrontational slash controversial?
Whoa, okay. I have to say, I worked in South Africa for a while, and this was a big push. And there are a lot of contestation from the side of that. And a fit for duty is a model that is also applicable in United Kingdom, and the South Africa kind of replicate the model. And definitely the idea has a lot of sides to this story, and I think workers can feel stigmatized with that. And I think functional in the job and job description, we have to do a better job on making those job descriptions and job functions clear when workers are applying for the work. Also, really creating systems where the jobs and tasks that are difficult, that workers understand that they have the right to withdraw from different tasks if they don't feel they can perform. So doing this task can create limitations for these for workers who wants to do the job and are motivated to do the job, but they might have some restrictions in the tasks for them. So I would say there are controversies all around. I cannot answer all the points of controversy that exist, but I do know that there are no consensus yet that this is the best approach.
Thank you. Somebody's asking about professional development opportunities in the total worker health and universal design area.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great questions. I think there is a particular event happening this month in Washington, D.C. for designing workplaces. I don't know who is this person that asked that. Please send me an email. Just say, I'm the person who asked about this. I will be happy to send that event. But in terms of professional development and total health, there are a list of courses, on demand, webinars, and all types of certification and courses available at the NIOSH Total Health Programs website. I teach some courses here in Oregon. And I also be happy to share what we have available here. And then actually we support the Oregon Healthy Workforce Center where I work, which is part of the institute where I work. We are responsible for professional development in the Pacific Northwest region. And we've been working hard to bring total health knowledge and awareness in this part of the United States. But other centers, there are 10 centers of excellence across the United States. So I would highly suggest, if you haven't seen those 10 centers, the way to find it, you can look into the NIOSH Total Health programs, and you see the centers of excellence in total health. And you see there are 10 centers, and each of the centers offer different professional development opportunities.
Thank you. Somebody's asking about proven exercise programs, lifestyle change programs, or related that employers can implement for the aging workforce. And the key word there, I suppose, was proven. So sort of data evaluated.
Yeah, I love this question because I'm a scientist, so I'm like, yes, you want improvement. Yeah, I'm a physical therapist too, but what I like about thinking about exercise program is that yes, we don't have, and I will tell you this in a very kind of clear way, for prevention of musculoskeletal disorders, we don't have enough evidence at the moment to support exercise program. Prevention of injuries is a different story than physical fitness. And of course, there are a number of research supporting health promotion in the workplace and staying active. There's no doubt that for our aging workforce, keeping them active and keeping them physically fit would support their longevity in the workplace. So the research is pretty clear on the health promotion, health wellness side of exercise. The research is also not clear about how can exercise support prevention of injuries. And so I would say there are certain types of exercise, stretching programs, warm-up programs that somewhat we have would say low to moderate evidence that supports doing in the workplace. But we don't have strong evidence that all these back exercise programs and the warm-up programs really reduce the injury rates.
Thank
So I
you.
don't know if, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, we have run out of time here. I think if there are quite a few more questions that didn't get answered. I think if you were to drop an email to Dr. Costa-Black, I get a feeling she'd be more than happy to answer your questions. So feel free to follow up. You can learn more and register for our upcoming events at coeh.berkeley.edu. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find recordings of previous webinars and other events. And as a reminder, all participants who logged in with their registration email today will receive a link to the evaluation form that will qualify you for one certificate of completion worth one continuing education contact hour. If you have any questions for us here at COEH Northern California, you can also drop us a line, coehce@berkeley.edu. That's coehce@berkeley.edu. Another big thank you to Dr. Katia Costa-Black. We really appreciate your time today and your treasure trove of resources and excellent presentation.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you for attending.
Bye-bye. See you next time.
Bye.